Welcome to this edition of Go Vote Omaha, presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I'm Jasmine Frazier, a League member, and I'll be your facilitator for tonight's conversation. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization and does not endorse political candidates or parties. Our purpose is to empower voters and defend democracy. Go Vote Omaha focuses on policy issues, and as a result of our discussions, we hope you will be ready to make an informed decision during election time. Today, we will hear from the two candidates for the Omaha Public Power District Board of Directors to represent Subdivision 5. Our objective is for voters to hear about issues and policies directly from candidates in a nonpartisan environment. To find out more about the candidates that will be on your ballot this November, visit vote411.org, organized and published by the League of Women Voters of Nebraska Volunteers. Vote411.org is a one-stop shop for election-related information. It provides specifics about the election process, details about general and state candidates, and information directly from candidates who educate the public about their platform by responding to the vote411.org questionnaire. The format for today is as follows. Each candidate will get a 1-minute opening statement, followed by questions prepared by the League of Women Voters. Each candidate will answer every question and will have up to 90 seconds to answer. Following the questions, each candidate will have a 1-minute closing statement. We alternate speaking order throughout the forum. A timekeeper will signal candidates when they have 30 seconds of time remaining and when to stop speaking. Before the forum, the candidates drew numbers to determine the initial speaking order. I will introduce them now in that order. The two candidates running for Omaha Public Power District Board of Directors Subdivision 5 are Kevin Ryan and Greg Moody. First, we'll start with opening statements. Kevin, take it away.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for this invitation. I was born and raised in Omaha. I went to law school at Nebraska, and I've been a lawyer here in Omaha for the last 25 years. And I'm running for the board because Nebraskans want their power to be safe and affordable and above all, reliable. And that's a simple concept, but in the past few years, I feel like OPPD has gradually gotten away from taking care of the customers, the people that open up their electricity bills every month. I'm also running to stop rate increases that, in my view, the ones that we had this year and the ones that I think we're going to have next year and the year after and the year after, rate increases that I feel are avoidable and unnecessary. And finally, I'm running because I do believe in a transition that we're making toward renewable energy, but I want that transition to be reasonable. That's why I'm running.
Craig?
Well, thanks to the League of Women Voters, not only for inviting us today, but for the great work that you do. It's truly important in our community, so thank you. My name is Craig Moody. I have been on the board now for just over 5.5 years, and it has truly been an absolute honor to represent the constituents of Subdistrict 5. This industry is changing at light speed. The demand for the electricity that OPPD provides is growing at a rate that I think nobody really anticipated. And so it is critically important that the board continues to have people on it who understand the industry, who know it extraordinarily well, who have experience in it. So that's the reason that I'm running again, is because my first term was really about planning and vision, and the second term for me is going to be about execution of that plan, which requires quite a bit of knowledge and quite a bit of expertise.
Okay, let's start with questions. What do you hope to accomplish in 6 years while on the board? Craig?
Well, as I said, in the next 6 years, there will be a lot of work that's required in order to execute on the vision that we've set. So as an example, we are in the process of constructing 2 natural gas facilities. We're in the process of procuring about 600 megawatts of solar. We are decommissioning a nuclear facility. We're exploring all sorts of technologies to give our customer owners exactly what they want when they think about how they want to interact with the utility. the lift is significant. There is a lot of work to do, and so all of those things need to get accomplished in the next 6 years. That includes a lot of significant additions to the work that we've already done around public engagement, community engagement, and making sure our customer owners are well represented. So there is a heck of a lot of work to do, and one of the other things that I think gets lost in all of that is the critical focus that we have maintained and will continue to maintain on affordability, reliability, and environmentally sensitive. That is our mission. The good news is that for the last the last 6 years that I've been on the board, we've held rates flat for 5 years. So we've had one modest increase right at the end. Reliability is market leading. So we're living up to our mission, and the good news is that we're making a transition to cleaner energy that's happening over time while not sacrificing the affordability and reliability that is required in our mission.
Kevin?
Thank you very much. What I'd like to accomplish in the next 6 years has a lot to do with one of the biggest platforms that I'm running on, and that has to do with rates. And one of the reasons for that is because right now OPPD has cash reserves somewhere in the amount of $600 million or more. What this last rate increase that Craig mentioned, that OPPD called a modest increase of 3.2, which again is something that I think is going to be perpetually something we're going to be seeing in the next 3 or 4 years, brings in about $25 million, give or take, into OPPD. And so when I talk to people about that, when I've talked about running in this race, and then they've said to me, well, with that amount of money that OPPD has, what do they need with that extra $25 million? My answer to that is I don't think there is anything that they need with that. So that's one of the things I would like to accomplish in the next 6 years, is to get rates under control, and I think we can do that economically. That's not just me saying that. I've talked with people inside OPPD and outside of OPPD, and I know that we can get that done. That's a campaign promise. I'm very, very serious about rates for OPPD customers.
Question 2, can you talk about the decision to delay the closure of the coal plant in North Omaha? Kevin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think I can. One of the problems with addressing it specifically is because it just happened. It happened kind of in a way that pulled the rug out from under not only the community of North Omaha, but also environmentalists in the community. It doesn't matter if you're somebody who is on the side of the fence of keeping fossil fuels as long as we need them, or if you're on the side of the fence of going to all renewable right now. What we need are plans that actually work and plans that are actually followed through with. The problem with the closing of the North Omaha plant was that that was a plan that took a commitment that OPPD made and then did not implement that plan properly. Whether that's studies that went wrong, whether that was just trying to be environmental on ideology alone and just say that this is what we want to do to appease some people, knowing that it wouldn't happen, or whether or not it's a matter of OPPD telling the board this is what we can and can't do at all times. Either way, all of those things are bad. And so I would like to change the way that plans are implemented, studied, and followed through with at OPPD, and North Omaha is a great example.
Great.
Well, the direction that the utility is headed is pretty clear. We've got a net zero by 2050 goal. That's where we're going. We're not alone. Nearly any electric utility that you run across has those same objectives. The commitment to transition North Omaha away from coal was made back in 2016, and we were very much on track up until about a year ago. And what happened a year ago is, as you might imagine, anytime you're going to make significant upgrades to a transmission system, you need regulatory approvals. And there's a process by which they get studied. Normally that was running about 1.5 to 2 years. That's been significantly delayed. The study queue is now backed up to a point where those studies take about 4 to 5 years to accomplish. So the district is very much, in terms of what it can control, is on track. The construction is happening, the ground has been broken, and we're gonna have those natural gas facilities ready to go. The problem is we can't connect them to the grid, which is entirely out of the district's control. We're gonna have those plants ready to go, and I suspect, I can't guarantee anything, but I suspect that we'll be able to shift North Omaha off of coal sooner rather than what we're anticipating, what is projected. But all of that is happening at a regulatory scale that is outside of OPPD's control. The good news is that by delaying, we're gonna avoid regional blackouts. Period, full stop. That was why that decision had to be made.
Question 3, talk about the future of energy costs. What are your thoughts on how OPPD can ensure reasonable electric bills in the future? Craig.
Well, as I've said, I appreciate Kevin's desire to paint us in a light where we're raising rates at crazy astronomical levels, but that's just not true. For 5 years, we held rates entirely flat, and then after that, after holding them flat for 5 years, we raised them a modest 3.2%. That is not crazy inflation like we're experiencing in other ways. Is there a risk that rates could go up into the future? Sure, there may be, because everything else is going up, and that affects the utility. What I'm most interested in is how can we make electricity affordable for customer owners? And what they pay per kilowatt hour is certainly a part of that equation. I would also add that what they consume is also part of that equation. So a big priority for the board and for the district is, in addition to maintaining costs, containing costs, which we've done very well, it's also about how can we help our customer owners be more efficient with what they use. Quite candidly, customers don't care what they pay per kilowatt hour. Customers care what they pay per month. And that's why we're really focused on finding ways to keep that monthly bill down through a variety of different strategies that we've already started pursuing, and there are several more strategies that are out there for us to pursue. The track record is clear. One increase in 6 years, I think is pretty commendable, and that's what our goal is for the years going forward.
Kevin?
Well, again, OPPD loves to use that adjective modest when it talks about rate increases. I can tell you from people that I talk to, especially those that can't afford it, it's not a modest rate increase. But what's far more important is that there's going to be continuing rate increases. The $600 million in savings that OPPD has, there's nothing wrong with having savings, and there's nothing wrong with having money for bond ratings, credit, emergencies, things of that nature. But that's roughly about double, in my view, of what's needed for that. So we don't need those rate increases on customers who can't afford it. We're going to have fuel cost increases. Both MUD and OPPD are going to feel those. And it's bad enough that we're going to have that with our heating bills, but we're going to have those continuing with our air conditioning bills. Furthermore, we have a $30 fixed fee that still exists with OPPD that nobody likes. It affects poor people more than anybody, people who can't afford it. It affects people who want to conserve energy more. It affects people that want to do solar. And that's something that over the years, candidates have always said that they were against it, they were against it, they were against it. But once on the board, then it seems like it's just something that we need to have. We don't need to have that, and I would vote against that as well.
What is your opinion of a possible plan to charge higher rates for peak electricity hours? Kevin?
I'm in favor of anything that makes the way that OPPD bills its customers more fair. I've always been an advocate of smart metering technology. I'm in favor of lowering the caps on net metering for people that want to do solar for themselves. right now, OPPD's energy portfolio has 0.1 of its portfolio with solar. There's no surprise that people want to do solar for themselves. I don't know anywhere else in the country that's only at 0.1 on solar. So Senator John Kavanaugh actually has a bill to raise the cap on the ability to be able to save money in that way, and I'm in favor of that. So to answer the question, there are a lot of things that we can do to make sure that what people use is what they're paying for, and what people aren't using shouldn't be what they're paying for. So I think that needs to be looked into more, and that's something I'm very much in favor of.
Craig?
Yeah, well, that metering cap, we raised that a couple of years ago from 25 to 100, so we've made good progress. There's more opportunity to do there, but certainly making some good headway. And while we may be at 0.1% solar, we're at about 40% renewables total, with plans to add another 600 megawatts of solar. So I think there's good progress being made there. With respect to charging more for peak energy, ultimately, the challenge that a utility has is lopping off that peak. That's super critical, because when that peak is super high, we are required to have enough generation. When I say generation, think coal plants, natural gas facilities, all of the big things that generate electricity. We have to meet that peak plus 15%. So the higher that peak goes, the more we have to add, the more expensive it gets for customers. So we have several programs designed to reduce what that peak is, and there's no doubt that pricing is an important characteristic that will help people. It's a signal that will tell people whether or not it's time to reduce. It all requires an investment in technology, and that's a big part of what needs to happen, is that unless you or I know when peak is happening, we can't respond to that. So there are several things that have to happen before we're even on the cusp of charging people more. We're looking at rates wholesale. We had 3 8-hour workshops. We're really examining what our rates are designed to do and what the purpose of our rates are. They need to be future focused, but charging people a different rate at peak is something that's likely on the table, but it's the future.
Okay, question 5. OPPD has invested in solar panels in the Omaha area. Do you see a way to directly invest in wind production as well, Craig?
Well, we've got 1,000 megawatts of wind today, and when we look at when wind generates electricity and when solar generates electricity, they're at different times, interestingly. Wind is most productive at night. Solar, as you might imagine, is mostly kind of in late afternoon, early evening, and that's when we usually hit our peak demand. So as Kevin pointed out, we don't have a whole lot of solar today, and so it is a huge priority to increase the amount of solar that we have really significantly. There's about 600 megawatts that is planned by the district, and exactly where that happens and on whose land it is, there are questions all over the place about how the district is going to add solar. Wind is not a priority for us right now, because we've sort of hit a place where I wouldn't say we've maxed out, but in terms of how we need to generate electricity, where we need to generate electricity, and how to balance all of that out, wind is where we need it to be. The priority is adding solar, those 2 natural gas facilities that I mentioned. In the future, it's going to be about curtailing demand, as I've talked about earlier, and then looking at future technologies like batteries. That's really where things are going to get fun and interesting, is if we have the opportunity to bring batteries into the picture in an affordable way, in a way that can balance the system. We've got a pilot going right now, and that will tell us a lot about how batteries are going to play in.
Kevin?
Thank you. That is, the number of the percentage that we use of wind is something that always surprises everybody when I talk to them about the OPPD energy mix portfolio. Nobody knows that we use about almost 40% wind, because we don't see it. It's scattered throughout Nebraska. It's up north, it's south, it's west. And Craig is right. We are sort of maxed out on how much we can use, and it's kind of complicated why that is, because that was one of my first questions, was if wind's working so well and it's renewable, why don't we just use more of that? So what that gets to is probably the need to use more of the other renewable energy, which would be solar, and of course battery backup. With the Power with Purpose plan, right now there's a plan to build 80 megawatts of solar out by UTAN. Now that's going to be done in a couple of years, and that's a little behind schedule. But even when that is completed, 80 megawatts is not a whole lot of power. I think that powers about 14,000 homes or something like that. So there needs to be a plan of how, if we are going to move toward renewables as the commitment is that OPPD made, there has to be a plan of how we're going to implement that. And that particular plan with bringing that renewable in, that's a snail's pace plan. So again, that gets back to trying to make these plans a little bit more efficiently.
Question 6. Do you believe Nebraska as a state should have an overall climate strategy? Kevin.
I'm definitely in favor of there being an overall climate strategy in the state of Nebraska. I know that's something that Omaha is moving on right now, in the last couple of weeks actually. I have been an environmentalist my whole adult life, but I have always wanted to have plans that are intelligent, that are smart, and that aren't going to sacrifice reliability, and that aren't going to be unaffordable. The reason why I think a climate plan for Nebraska would be a good idea is that we need to have as many studies as we can and look to as many experts as we can to get to where we want to go. Because we're not going to get there, again, as I said before, we don't get to any significant environmental change on ideology alone. And that is one of the things that I would be in support of, and that's something I definitely would be in support of as a member on the board as well.
Craig?
Yeah, I agree with everything Kevin just said. I do climate planning for a living, so naturally it might make sense that I would be in favor of a climate plan for the state of Nebraska. And the good news is that there's progress being made. The city of Lincoln has a really good climate plan. I'm biased there because I worked on it, and the city of Omaha is moving. I think, you know, climate plans really need to look at two things. One is mitigation, so driving down emissions, doing less bad. That's one way to look at it. And the other is about building adaptive and resilient systems, because the reality is the climate is changing. It's changing in ways that are causing, I mean, we're sitting here as this is being recorded, there's a significant hurricane down in Florida, South Carolina. But we're not immune to it. We've had significant storms in the last 2 or 3 years in Omaha that were exacerbated by the fact that the climate is changing. So a climate plan isn't just about driving down emissions, and it isn't just about renewables. It has to be about the fact that our systems need to be built to be resilient to floods, to significant storms that are going to be more severe and more frequent over time. So, and it needs to be coordinated. The system level stuff is really, really critical. Omaha can't do it alone. OPPD can't do it alone. The grid sits over the entire country, and so from an OPPD standpoint, that state level guidance and, dare I say, federal level guidance would be super critical to help ensure that OPPD knows where it fits.
Okay, we've reached closing statements. Each candidate will have 1 minute. I'll start with Craig.
Thank you, and thanks again for having us. This is actually, this is our only opportunity to be together to do this, so I really enjoyed it. This, as I said earlier, this is an industry that's changing at light speed, and as Kevin said earlier, it is extraordinarily complex. Every time I think I have it figured out, I'm thrown a curveball, and I have to dig in and learn something new, learn something more. So what I would encourage the voters of Subdistrict 5 to think about is voting for me. And the reason I think that would be helpful is because a history of expertise and some experience on this board pays significant dividends when it comes to making sure that the district is doing what it needs to do to serve its customer owners. I represent you. And I keep that at the forefront of every decision that I make, and I'll continue to do that if reelected.
Kevin?
Thank you very much for the invitation also. Fans of the Hunger Games will remember that there were different representative districts. Transportation district, weaponry district, technology. But Craig and I are running in OPPD's District 5. And do you know what District 5 was in the Hunger Games? It was power and electricity. Now that's not terribly relevant to this forum, but it is a fun fact. And a not fun fact is the fact that there was a 55% undervote in our race in the primary. That means that half the people that voted in the last election didn't vote for OPPD at all. And the things we've talked about tonight are too important for that. So whether you vote for Kevin Ryan or whether you vote for Craig Moody, please vote on November 8th. And thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you for joining us tonight. If you want to learn more about the candidates and issues that will be on your ballot, visit vote411.org for a personalized tool. A special thank you to our candidates, Kevin and Craig, for participating in tonight's conversation. For the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha, I'm Jasmine Frazier. As always, we urge you to be informed and be a voter on November 8th. Go vote, Omaha.